Do you have a favorite story about your dad that you would share?
Yeah. He loses a state championship game in 2009. No, 2007. He loses a state championship game on a buzzer beater. He was the heavy favorite. They lose the state championship game. There's probably 5,000 people there watching. And in where we live, there was a local news cameraman who came up after him, interviewed him, and said, "Coach, on TV, what do you think went wrong? What do you tell your kids after a devastating loss like this?" He says, "I'm going to go tell my team that they played their best, they played great, they played as hard as they could, and tomorrow morning the sun is going to shine." So watching this interview was a guy named Jim Bransfield who was watching the interview from a hospital bed with his son who was dying of leukemia, 12 years old. And he sees that interview. He writes my dad a note um, that day and says, "I just want to let you know that I saw that your interview, and I was touched by it because your kids lost the game. My son Dana is losing a bigger battle right now. It's a very important battle, and it's not going to go well. We're not going to win this game." So my father gets the note, and Jim Branfield wrote a big letter to the editor and explained this story. Jim Branfield says 3 days later, after that game, nurse comes and says, "There's a group of people. There's a guy that downstairs that wants to come up and see you." My father had never met this man. Jim comes down, and it's my dad at the hospital, come to see Dana. And he's got a basket. And Jim says Coach Montelli had a basketball with every player signing it, a pair of rosary beads, a set of rosary beads and flowers for my wife. And he goes, "Coach Montelli didn't come alone." He writes in this article, "Coach Montelli didn't come alone," Jim said. "He brought his entire team to the hospital." So this explains the lessons, one of many lessons that I have been taught in my dad, why he was a world-class coach, but a world-class off-the-court coach. He got the letter. He was so moved. He said, "Everybody get in a van. We're driving to the hospital. We're going to go see Dana." Now, the team wasn't allowed to go up to the floor to see Dana because he had slipped. He died 3 days later. But my father was able to spend a lot of time with Dana during those last 3 days. The whole team went to the wake. The whole team went to the funeral. Those are the lessons. That is a lesson, Thomas, that those players will never forget, nor will I. And so when you ask me to give one story about my dad, I think that there's a bunch of them, but that one comes to the top of my head, where an interview he gave after a very difficult loss, it made an impact. It touched somebody. Jim Bransfield in this case, and his wife, and they had an incredible. They were able to meet my dad, meet the team, and and he was a sports writer. He wrote a long letter to the editor about explaining this story. My father never wanted that to be known. He didn't want that to be out there. But Jim wrote an article. My father got so much praise over that. It was just something he did. He just knew he was going to do that. He was going to do that, and so that's an example, I think, of making an impact on people, and that is the beauty of being a coach, being of service to others. You can have a real impact on folks. So I hopefully that story makes a little bit of sense. But that was a special one.